Hi, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee today. I'm Councilor James Homewood. Okay, we'll crack straight on with the agenda for the meeting. So item 1, membership of the committee. We are all here apart from Councillor Thompson. We're not sure, we think maybe he's not coming, but we're not 100%, but there's nobody substituting at the moment. Okay, minutes. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Is everybody happy with those minutes are accurate? We happy? Move those? Yeah, we all agreed. Good stuff. Item 3, declarations of interest and lobbying. Before we just go around members, I'm just going to hand over to Victoria, our legal officer, who's going to read a statement or on this matter.
Good afternoon. My name is Victoria Lee. I'm the Principal Planning Officer at Kirklees and the legal advisor for this Strategic Planning Committee. I just wish to give members a little bit of advice around bias and predetermination before we start. In respect of the Castle Hill application, given the history and the public interest in this application, I need to remind members of the legal principles on bias and predetermination. Members must comply with Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights and the common law duty of fairness. Decision makers must have neither actual bias nor the appearance of bias. The courts have held that the test is whether a fair-minded and informed observer would conclude that there is a real possibility of bias. Members may have predispositions and may have engaged with residents, but must not approach the decision with a closed mind or a fixed intention to vote, regardless of today's debate. Particular care is required where a member has submitted a written objection or made public statements. Correspondence, petitions or social media posts indicating a concluded position may create an appearance of bias. If a member has expressed a view in terms suggesting a fixed outcome, participation may give rise to a significant risk of legal challenge. I would therefore invite members to consider, have I publicly committed to a particular outcome? Would an objective observer question my impartiality? Can I genuinely listen to all representations and be persuaded? If there is any doubt, the safest course is not to participate. Remaining members would determine the application solely on the relevant planning considerations and the evidence presented today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Victoria. So what we'll do now is we'll go around members and they can declare if they have any interests or have received any lobbying. Yes, Councillor Stock, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair. I received an email from applicant this week, I think on Monday or Tuesday, but I haven't taken any action on there. It's a Castle Hill application.
Thank you, Chair. I've been lobbied on application 93494 by the applicant by email this week. It was just information provided, but I have been lobbied by supporters and objectors, no advice given. I also want to raise to the committee today and to Chair, for the record, I wish to make it known that I sat previously when this application was heard before, and I'm here today, and that application was heard, I think it was around 2020. I'm here today with an open mind, no predetermination.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, like Councillor Scott, I too was here for the consideration of that application. And I have been lobbied by the applicant and on behalf of, well, not behalf of the applicant, in terms of the application by Simon Armitage. And I've just noted that in all cases. And I wish to reassure people that despite my previous involvement, I'm approaching this application with a completely open mind, and I hope to be persuaded one way or the other by the arguments that I hear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to make a statement for the record that as a member of the Planning Committee, I understand and take seriously the role, and that I have not come to this meeting with my mind made up. But having read the officer's report and after listening to whatever presentations we've here today, I will judge the new scheme on its merits. I was part of a group letter that objected previously, but since then there has been a lot more information received. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As with colleagues, I did sit on the earlier application, which has gone totally out of my mind now, so that's over and done with. And I have no idea what we'll be voting today. I'm waiting to hear the evidence. I have received an email which quoted Simon Armitage. I don't think it was actually from Simon Armitage. Interesting reading, didn't rhyme, so I wasn't that interested in it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. For myself, yeah, I've had the same email on behalf of Simon Armitage objecting. I've had correspondence from the applicant, same as everybody else I have had in the past, some other correspondence from the applicant as well, but no action taken or advice given. Okay. So we shall now move on to item 4, which is admission of the public. Obviously, it's a public meeting. People are here, but we'll be having the meeting in public, and we're on the webcast as well. Public question time. Any questions?
No, Chair.
Or deputations, petitions?
There's no deputations or petitions.
Okay. Item 7, we did conduct a site visit earlier this morning, so that's been completed. We'll now move on to the planning applications themselves. So before we start that section, I'm just going to bring in Nick, who's going to just give a bit of a summary. So we've had a planning appeal that we just want to bring the results of to the outcome of to people's attention. So Nick, I'll just hand over to you to summarise that quickly before we start the applications.
Thank you, Chair. Good day, members. My name is Nick Hurst, Team Leader for Major Developments. What follows is just a quick verbal update for the outcome of an appeal following an application that was determined by committee. The application in question is 2023-92191, which was for 62 dwelling development at an allocated housing site, HS144, at Cliff Lane, Denby Dale. It was the second of 3 full applications for major residential development at the site that were refused. No appeals were submitted against the other 2 refusals. Following the committee's resolution to refuse in June 2024, officers defended the reasons for refusal through a comprehensive statement of case. However, on 06/02/2026, the appeal was allowed. The written representations for the appeal took almost a year to determine, having started on the 18th of February 2025. Members will recall that there was significant local objection to the application. This included over 50 representations, including objections from the ward members, Denby Dale Parish Council, and the Upper Dearne Valley Environmental Trust. Local concerns related to many matters, including the environmental impacts of the development as well as the remediation of the site. Members will recall that remediation, in the form of removal of material and grouting, which would involve significant HGV movements to and from the site, would have been necessary given the area's coal mining history and the coal that remained present at the site. The appeal inspector noted that there would indeed be environmental impacts, but that their temporary nature and the conditions made by the development their temporary nature and the proposed conditions were acceptable. The inspector also noted that extent of site remediation works was not particularly unusual. The appeal decision made no mention of downstream emissions should coal be removed from the site. As officers understand, this is because the inspector was satisfied that the coal would not have been burnt given the agreements in place. The Planning Inspectorate published their own EIA screening opinion in October and concluded it was not EIA development. The appeal decision makes no mention of the housing delivery test, tilted balance, etc., as it appears she considered the proposal to be acceptable in any case without applying the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The inspector did not accept residents' arguments that vehicle access should be provided from the north end of the site. The inspector has usefully reviewed all of the Section 106 items, confirming each one was needed to make the development acceptable in planning terms and that the SIL tests were met. Almost all of the conditions recommended by officers were imposed. However, the inspector omitted those regarding permitted development rights and elevational accreditations. No costs were sought or rewarded, with nothing further, Chair.
Thanks, Nick. That really was just for an update, just because it was quite a contentious item at the time. But so I'm not proposing necessarily any discussion on that, but it might be one members want to read through the decision on in future, just as interest. Okay. So moving on to the applications, what I'm proposing to do is that we move item 10 forward on Castle Hill, so we hear that first, just because we've got a lot of people here to listen to that application, and then we'll go back to item 9. Hopefully that's okay with all members. Yeah, is that okay? Good. So we'll do that then. We'll go straight to item 10 and I'll hand over back to Nick to present on that one when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair and members. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a restaurant, cafe, bar, 6 guest rooms, exhibition/interpretation room, toilets, terraces, car parking and ancillary accommodation. The application is presented to Strategic Planning Committee as a proposed development represents a departure from the Kirklees local plan, and given the substantial number of representations received, additionally, Ward Councillor Munro has requested the application be brought to committee. The current image shows the site location and nearby roads. Members may recall or be aware that the application for the site has been previously considered and approved at the committee meeting held October 2020. That application, reference 2018-93591, was substantially similar to that proposed. However, the time limit for that application to be implemented has now expired. The principal differences between the two applications are detailed in paragraph 3.5 of the committee report. This image shows many of the constraints on the site. The site is within the green belt. Victoria Tower is shown by the blue square. Just point there. There you go. Victoria Tower, shown by the blue square, is Grade 2 listed. The hillside, Castle Hill, as denoted by the yellow, is a scheduled monument. It should be noted that, in addition to planning permission, the applicant would be required to secure scheduled monument consent from the Secretary of State and Historic England, given the works affect the scheduled monument. There are also several public rights of ways, including a byway open to all traffic, denoted by the purple and red lines. Much of the site is also designated as a local wildlife site and is within a wildlife habitat network. This image shows the proposed layout and its relationship to Victoria Tower, again identified in blue. The new building would be sited on the approximate location of the former public house that was demolished circa 2004. For the avoidance of doubt, officers give limited weight to the former building on site, given the significant time lapse since its removal. Other works include the expansion and formal laying out of the existing car park to provide a formal 41 parking bays plus cycle parking. So the cycle located there and the parking area around. A service yard over part of the existing hard standing would also be sited adjacent to the building there. These images show the proposed elevations of the building. In reaching the design, consideration was given to whether a traditional or contemporary design would be more suitable, with a contemporary design being concluded to be the most appropriate response to the site. This has resulted in what officers consider to be a thoughtful, high-quality design where consideration has been given to the visitor experience and the need to celebrate the site and facilitate appreciation of Castle Hill's positive attributes. This image shows the relationship with Victoria Tower when viewed from the southeast, and again from the northeast, and these images demonstrate the low prominence the building would have. These images show two sectional plans of the proposed building. As can be seen, the building would have 3 stories, with 2 being subterranean. This plan is for the ground floor, which in this case would be the top floor. This is to host the cafe, bar, restaurant area. It is proposed, via condition, to limit it to 70 covers. This image shows the lower ground floor, which is to host the exhibition and interpretation room, toilets, and ancillary accommodation. The ancillary accommodation includes 6 overnight rooms, which are intended to diversify the site's business to help sustain its viability. And finally, this is the smaller basement level to host back-of-service facilities. This and the next image are indicative 3D renders of the proposal. I would stress that these are indicative renders, however, and not formal plans like have been seen previously. They are intended to provide context and understanding of the proposal, not necessarily full, accurate representations. And this is a closer situated 3D render, where you can see the windows of the lower ground floor accommodation, again, which would be partly subterranean. As noted previously, the current site hosts various public rights-of-way. The proposed building would interfere with 2 of these, as highlighted by the red and blue circles. The application proposes to reroute these via a new route, which is acceptable in principle from a planning perspective. However, for the avoidance of doubt, the stopping up of the existing prows and formal dedication of the new route would need to be secured via a separate diversion process, with technical details of the new route sought via condition. The report before members outlines Office's full and detailed assessment of the proposal. I shall, however, provide a summary. First, it must be acknowledged that a substantially similar scheme has been previously considered and approved by the local planning authority. While a decision maker is not bound by past decisions, decision makers are expected to act consistently and with reason. Consideration is therefore required to what, if any, material changes of circumstances would warrant a departure from a previous decision. The local plan, 2019, remains the local development plan, and while the MPPF has been revised, officers are satisfied that none of the changes are considered to materially affect the proposal compared to the previous assessment, as is set out within the report. In terms of the proposal specifics, the site is located within the Greenbelt. The proposal has been identified to be an appropriate development within the Greenbelt. This is acknowledging recent changes to the MPPF, which has introduced the concept of grey belt, which officers do not consider this site to be. Per national policy, inappropriate development within Greenbelt should only be approved where there are very special circumstances which clearly outweigh the harm of the proposal. These will be considered shortly. It must also be acknowledged that the proposal would impact upon the heritage significance of Victoria Tower, which is Grade 2 listed, and Castle Hill as a scheduled monument. This includes through introducing a new building into the historic setting of Victoria Tower and Castle Hill and the potential archaeological implications for the scheduled monument. However, archaeological investigations and mitigation are recommended to be secured via condition, as was previously imposed. Officers also consider the harm to be mitigated by the low prominence of the building, which would not compete with the heritage buildings, and its high quality of design. Weighing the development's impact upon the heritage assets, as is required by local and national policy, the proposal is considered by officers to amount to less than substantial harm to the heritage significance of the heritage assets. In such cases, local and national policy requires that this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of a proposal. The very special circumstances and public benefits of the proposal are identified in paragraph 10.25 of the committee report and are summarised as the provision of free and accessible toilet facilities, the provision of shelter on an otherwise open hillside, making the site more accessible, facilities to provide refreshments, the provision of information boards to support information at the site, and the inclusion of the interpretation room with control over the content and use of the facility proposed to be managed and maintained by the Council through a management plan drawn up pursuant to the requirements of the 106 agreement. Each of these factors carry variable weight in of themselves, with the provision of the interpretation room considered to carry particular weight in favour of the proposal. Considering these factors together on a fine application of the planning balance, it is concluded that the public benefits of the proposal would outweigh the identified harm, specifically through both being inappropriate development within the Greenbelt and the resulting less than substantial harm to the heritage assets. Per the recommendation and previous decision, it is recommended that a Section 106 agreement be secured that includes the package of obligations to provide certainty that the identified public benefits are indeed delivered. along with securing a management plan for the exhibition interpretation room and toilets, including securing of public access without charge. It is noted that representations have questioned the viability of the proposed business, with concerns that should the business fail, the harmful impacts of the building's construction would be caused without the corresponding public benefits. Acknowledging this concern and the concern that the previous approval did not commence within 3 years, as part of this application, the applicant provided a business case to demonstrate the viability of the proposed business. This has been reviewed by a local independent expert. The advisor concluded that the applicant's financial business plan has been prepared on a sensible basis and there are no inherent concerns regarding the financial viability of the proposed business that would suggest that there exists fundamental issues. However, they recommended that periodic updates be secured and that a fresh financial forecast be provided after a year to reflect changes in circumstances. As this relates to a planning application where, once commenced, permission could not be reasonably rescinded, periodic reports could not be practically secured. However, it is recommended that the 106 agreement include a clause requiring that, prior to development commencing, up-to-date information be provided to demonstrate the appropriate funding is in place of the development to be undertaken, and that, if development does not commence within 1 year, a business plan addendum is provided prior to commencement to demonstrate that the business plan remains sound. Such provisions were not secured as part of the previous application and are considered by officers to provide a robust security on the matter. In terms of other considerations, I'll now pass over to Chris Dowes from Kirklees Highways to discuss highway matters. Through you, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. I'm Chris Dowes, Group Engineer, Highway Development Management. Access to the site, before we start, I think from a planning perspective, there's been no material changes since we last looked at this application. It was previously approved. Access to the site from Castle Hill side, which is a byway, it's a byway open to all traffic. It has a definitive width of 3.7 metres wide and is maintained at public expense. It's acknowledged that the proposal would result in an intensification of traffic, and it's acknowledged that some mitigation would be required to mitigate this. Castle Hill is a scheduled ancient monument, and it has to be sort of recognised that any improvements need to be sympathetic and in keeping with its ancient monument status. In accordance with that, a series of passing places are proposed on Castle Hill side, together with a lining and signing scheme and some localised resurfacing. The scheme has been subject to an independent road safety audit, and this has identified a couple of items, including a section of dry stone wall, which is recommended will be reinstated in its original position. In terms of car parking, the car park will be formally laid out and will provide 41 spaces, identical to the previous scheme. In terms of checking whether the parking is adequate, there's been a parking accumulation survey undertaken based on actual surveys undertaken at the site, together with TRIX data to determine the level of traffic determined by the development. Accumulation exercise has demonstrated that that is acceptable, subject to the 70 cover restaurant. The traffic generated by the development in terms of its weekday peaks are fairly minimal, 10 in the morning and 21 in the evening. Its busiest periods are likely to be Saturday and Sundays, particularly the Sunday afternoons when it's likely to be its busiest, and the carpet will under most pressure. It's considered that the traffic generated will not have a severe impact on the local highway network, that the access arrangements are adequate, and that the parking can be accommodated on site. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Various other material planning considerations are assessed and found to be acceptable in the committee report, subject to the recommended conditions and legal agreement. This includes, but is not limited to, ecological implications and drainage. Castle Hill is one of the most distinctive and prominent landscape features in the region and is widely visible within Kirklees. It is an instantly recognisable landmark and an icon of Almondbury, Huddersfield and Kirklees, and it forms a visual backdrop to the daily lives of thousands of people, being incredibly important to many. 124 representations have been received for this application, the majority of which are in objection. Per the committee report, several petitions opposed to the development have also been provided. The objectors have also noted that 321 representations were received in response to the previous application, again, mostly in objection. These historic representations are noted, but acknowledged to not form part of this current application. The representations received as part of this application and the various concerns raised are detailed within the committee report where they are considered and found to have been addressed. In conclusion, while officers acknowledge the impact of the proposal, given due regard to the planning balance, the public benefits of the proposal are found to outweigh the identified harm. Therefore, officers recommend approval of the application, subject to securing of the Section 106 and conditions per the recommendation and per the amended condition within the committee update. Nothing further, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to come to public representations. So when I call your name to speak, if you remember, the public will have 3 minutes to speak. There is a clock, I think, there that will show what time you have. I will have to be strict on the time just because there's a lot of people to speak today. But yeah, we'll go through the speakers now. So the first person I've got on the list is Linda Beaver. So Linda, when you're ready, turn your mic on and yeah, off you go.
The Atlas of UK and Ireland Hill Forts has got 4,147 entries in it. The only planning application against any of those entries that I can find is Castle Hill in Huddersfield. We bought a visitor, the late Professor Mick Aston, from Time Team fame, to look at Castle Hill a few years back, and he likened it to the Glastonbury of the North. So we looked at Glastonbury as a comparator. Glastonbury Tor, managed by the National Trust, has no facilities on its site whatsoever. Visitors are directed to Glastonbury Town for all facilities and amenities, and the site itself is preserved as a priority by the National Trust for its spiritual, historic and scenic aspects. Castle Hill itself, as a site in Huddersfield, has been used for some 8,000 years. Intermittently, with several phases of occupation and abandonment. Abandonment being one of the prior things. No one seems to have ever made a success on the top of that hill. The previous hotel, which was put up in 1850, changed hands lots of times during its lifetime and was frequently in disrepair and in poor repair prior to its demolition. The current state of Castle Hill itself needs work on it in terms of some of the vegetation, and there has been a removal of a previous outline of a medieval building. Don't know why. In terms of putting any build up there at all, hospitality is a very, very risky business at the moment, as we all know, particularly in rural areas, even in cities like Leeds and in York, places are closing down. Now, we looked at the costs of running what we class as high-tech centres that attract visitors. And we looked at one called Cresswell Crags, which is not too far away. It costs £320,000 a year to run Cresswell Crags, and it attracts 50,000 visitors a year. I'm not sure who's done the sums here, but we would anticipate, for the benefit of residents of Huddersfield, a very high-tech visitor centre and not a couple of pop-up boards. But our submission from Huddersfield and District Archaeology Society is, if a building goes up there at all, a new build, we are in a position in Huddersfield where we've already lost the opportunity to have a really good Roman fort experience when a decision was made by Huddersfield Corporation to build a golf course on the fort. We think the development of Castle Hill in any format with a building on it, on the monument itself, is an experimental risk which damages the spiritual, historical and scenic aspect of the site itself.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, the next speaker we've got is Janine Riley. So Janine, you've got 3 minutes too when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. The 2018 conditioned approval was an anomaly. It was preceded by 4 refusals for buildings of greater intensity of use than the 1850s hotel. 3 of the proposals were for new builds and all provided refreshments and WCs, public benefits. I contend that the reasons given for refusal then for those applications should apply now. The 2018 scheme introduced a large exhibition function room and the accommodation was lowered partway into the deep, broad hole, excavated without consent, to reduce some of its visual impact. The negative effects of lowering were not considered at the 2022 committee. This scheme, an irregular extension of the expired 2018 project, splits the exhibition area into 3 small spaces, 2 each the size of ensuite bedrooms, and a small gallery similar in size to the accessible WC. Would it cope with school parties, I wonder? And would they not prefer to experience the real thing? The fly-through provided makes it look vast, but it's shown out of scale. The iceberg concept of the building being half in, half out of the ground introduces harms, as the building can't be built without dismantling the near northwest embankment. This would contravene obligations in the working scheme of investigation required by Historic England to protect the site's archaeology. Carbon dating samples were taken from the embankments. The building can't work without its large service yard. Though a low-energy building in concept, basement areas will require a huge amount of cooling, forced ventilation, dehumidification, pump drainage and kitchen extraction equipment with grease filters, noise baffles and an outlet extracting above roof level. Most of this essential equipment will sit in the service yard, probably alongside a store for the external tables and chairs and several commercial waste bins. There is no room in the building for such large kit. The police required 2.4 metre high security gates, but I noticed these have been removed. Whether open or gated, this area will form an unsightly arrival point at the summit. It's no wonder that the visualisations have not been updated. The officer's report fails to mention the following important assessment from Conservation and Design. To quote, while the scheme includes some measures that may offer limited public benefit, these enhancements are minimal and do not outweigh the identified heritage harm when assessed in accordance with relevant planning policy. And remember, the officer also left out that you have to give great weight to the conservation of heritage assets in their balance. In the context of a national survey of English hill forts, Professor Giles from Manchester University, an expert in Iron Age hill forts, argues that this type and scale of intervention in the heart of a scheduled monument in this type of setting is unprecedented in modern times, and the granting of permission could pose a risk for other sites of cultural heritage significance nationwide. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we've got Martin Gilbert. And Martin, again, you've got 3 minutes when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. I have 4 points I wish to make in the next 3 minutes. Point 1, there's no case for putting forward to committee a new application for approval which includes a raft of conditions to be resolved after approval. Good governance requires this application includes the detail necessary to address known issues. In this way, an appropriate group of elected officials, such as are present today, can review and assess the adequacy of the measures proposed. This application should be rejected on this basis. Point 2. I draw the committee's attention to 2 statements. I am slightly duplicating my colleagues because I'm referring to 2 points, but they are both valid. And I quote, they are based on Kirklees' own conservation team's presentation statements on consultation. Whilst the introduction of a new, this is a quote, whilst the introduction of a new building in this location does create harm, the application provides some justification based on its design ethos and claimed public benefits such as toilets, refreshment and interpretation areas. However, from a heritage perspective, this does not amount to clear and convincing justification. There is no supporting evidence that these facilities are required or demanded. Quote 2 from the same team. It is considered that the introduction of a building within this location would result in harm to the setting of the monument. The proposal cannot be regarded as preserving or enhancing the significance of the heritage asset. Enhancements are minimal and do not outweigh the identified heritage harm when assessed in accordance with relevant planning policy. This is a statement by a specialist team in Kirklees' own team, and it disagrees with this application. Given these comments, I'd move on to my last 2 points. Section 106 conditions have statutory limitations regarding longevity. As members will be aware, such conditions time expire within 5 years. As such, the proposed use of this mechanism to underpin long-term delivery of benefits and avoid long-term harm is fatally flawed. And finally, unless the supporting business plan has been updated for deficiencies identified in the recent independent review by Messrs Weeble and Sudworth, and I have heard the comment earlier, this application does not include the required evidence of viability at this time. This is the time when you're being asked as a group to make a decision without the evidence in front of you. I strongly recommend this application on the basis of the above has no proven case and should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Gillian Starling. Gillian, you've got 3 minutes too.
Good afternoon. New issues drawn out by consultation represent serious issues. Part 1 is drainage. Flood authority requirements. The Flood Authority has stated that the proposed soak-away drainage is unacceptable and require an attenuation tank be sunk into the site to avoid overloading and rural drainage provision. Installation of this solution would require significant excavation into the scheduled ancient monument and along the course of any existing drains, given the much lower exit level of drainage from the tank. Yorkshire water drainage also require any existing foul drainage to be upgraded to provide adequate capacity for the proposed development. This will again require extensive excavations into the hillside ramparts of the Castle Hill Fort, creating serious harm to the SAM. Neither of these requirements have been taken into account when assessing harm to the green belt and the heritage assets. Each of the points evidences this building belongs in a town centre location, not an isolated rural location. Part 2, security. A claimed benefit for approval is that the presence of the building will address security issues at the top of Castle Hill. In fact, the reverse is true. The police security review highlights the isolated nature of the site, the low profile of the building, the sunken pedestrian routes and the sale of alcohol each create safety concerns for hotel guests, staff and site visitors and customers transversing to and from vehicles. The police recommendations include video surveillance with ANPR capability on high poles, security gates for the sunken entrances and passages, high fencing and gates to protect the service area, floodlighting of the building, outdoor areas and parking for customer safety. The development does not eliminate security issues. It introduces a whole new raft of issues. The recommended measures will destroy the essential features of Castle Hill, its openness and natural beauty, the very elements the building is supposed to explain and enhance. The harmful impact of these requirements cannot have been taken into account in the statutorily required net public benefits versus harm assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Mike Waters. So Mike, you've got 3 minutes too.
The depth of feeling by local residents and from conversations I've had with visitors have met on Castle Hill are the site is a peaceful oasis to experience a unique historic monument. My wife and I walk Castle Hill and the surrounding footpaths every day in all weathers. During lockdown, the restrictions were eased and I observed in one day, over a 6-hour period, over 106 families and couples enjoying this area and demonstrated to me the importance this open space is to the community. In recent years, a time-lock barrier was introduced which dramatically reduced antisocial behaviour, including litter, barbecues and gas bottles. This meant less calls to an already overstretched West Yorkshire Police Service. This upset the local criminal element, who caused serious damage to the barrier with sledgehammers on several occasions. The applicants for the hotel development appeared to have ignored police advice on site security by offering a night porter who, facing a hammer welding thugs, would only be able to do what local residents did for years and call the police. In 2025, a major fire started on the steps of the hill, caused catastrophic damage. Imagine this fire happening once the proposed hotel was in situ. What confusions and delays to persons and vehicles attempting to evacuate down the hill while emergency services were trying to drive up to reach the fire. Owing to the dynamics of the site, I dispute the council officer's calculations on noise pollution adjacent to the hill. It is currently possible to hear conversations at the top of the hill when walking on the lower footpaths or in the gardens of adjacent houses. Customers, vehicles and delivery trucks in low gear, as necessary for the steepness of the hill, and the fire, smoke alarms and air-conditioned extractor fans, etc., would cause further major pollution issues for this site, which would maybe considered acceptable in a town centre position, but not in a rural historic setting. It is difficult to see why the council is considering this development when millions are being allocated to encourage businesses to open up in the new upgraded town centre. And as the council area, also currently supporting planting of a vast numbers of trees around the hill for carbon capture and to improve the environment. This application seems to be in contradiction of the policy. I would ask the committee to refuse this proposal.
Thank you. So next we've got Anne Denham, and you've got 3 minutes too.
Thank you. I'd like you to consider a lovely summer afternoon. I'm walking down Hillside, the road from Castle Hill, with my daughter and son-in-law. There are many pedestrians around. We were overtaken by a car going down the road. Coming up the road is another vehicle. The car going down swerves to the left to avoid it, tips off the hillside, turns over and lands on the roof of a car driving up Long Lane. There is an almighty crash. We all dash to help, ring emergency services. Fortunately, no one is killed. Several taken to hospital. This is not an isolated event. It has happened before and since. Hillside is a narrow road. Cars can only pass carefully. Vehicles at present are restricted to the hours of daylight. The footpath circulating the hill crosses this road. This road is used by many, including cyclists, wheelchair users, the disabled, pushchair users, families, children, walkers of all ages, including me. Vehicles can park on the muddy verge on Long Lane. Already, this is frequently full. In this application, there is no mention of how lorries and larger vehicles of all sizes are going to safely access the top of this hill while it is a building site. But more importantly, how will the goods vehicles required to service a hotel and a business of this size access the site? How will they pass each other? How will they navigate the hairpin bend at the top? And there is no account of the pollution they will cause. To mitigate these problems, I've heard that traffic lights have been suggested. Anyone who's been up to Castle Hill on a summer's day will understand how ludicrous this would be. Heavy vehicles will be caught in a jam, blocking Long Lane both ways and stretching into Ashes Lane, or caught in a queue on the other end of the hill. In this application,
there is no up-to-date strategy that indicates how an increase in traffic like this is to be managed. There will be an increase or the project will fail. We go to Castle Hill to enjoy the panorama of our wonderful countryside. Its story is available in Tolson Museum. It is an extraordinarily beautiful place to come to play, exercise the dog, or just to enjoy the peace and reflect alone or in company of friends. This application should be refused.
Thank you. Next speaker is Donna Wright. Donna, you've got 3 minutes too.
I should explain, I've been asked by Simon Armitage, Poet Laureate, to read out his representation on his behalf. Dear Sirs and Misses, I am writing in support of the great many people protesting against the proposed development of Castle Hill. The archaeological and environmental objections have been raised time and time again and should be enough on their own to prevent the construction of an incongruous and unnecessary building on the summit of Huddersfield's most famous location. My point is a wider cultural and moral one, relating to what Castle Hill means to those of us who call this part of the world our home. Castle Hill is iconic. Its tower is a proud, reassuring beacon above the valleys below, part of the mindset of anyone who has grown up around it. The hill's silhouette is etched into our subconscious as a marker of identity. Its profile represents a place of imagination and contemplation, a landmark in both a geographical and psychological sense, and a place of escape and belonging at the same time. The geological feature connects the contemporary population with our historical ancestors and represents a point of continuity going back thousands of years. In an era where there is so much natural landscape is being degenerated, exploited and made private, this is a site that should be treasured, preserved as free and public land and maintained for its original characteristics. The tower itself may not be an architectural wonder of the world, or especially ancient, but it was built by builders using local stone to celebrate a historical national occasion. Over time, local people have taken emotional ownership of it and embraced it as a symbol of their territory. As a forward-thinking council, Kirklees should do everything that it can to uphold the integrity and the dignity of Castle Hill and act as guardians of one of the nation's semi-sacred hilltop locations, alongside the likes of Rosebery Topping or Arthur's Seat, the Cheviot, Silbury Hill, Dragon Hill and Glastonbury Tor, that it is the company that it keeps. For what it's worth, Castle Hill features in many of my poems and as a reference and a coordinate for a special part of the country, as a living monument to the area and as a compass needle for locals and visitors alike. The unique skyline in this corner of the Pennines is part of our cultural inheritance, an unmistakable horizon that needs to be conserved and made part of our gift to future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is John Mitchell. John, you've got 3 minutes too.
Thank you. Chair, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I simply want to amplify what the last four speakers have said. I've lived in Woodsum Valley in the shadow of the castle for 22 years. I've seen the stones of the original pub dispersed and disappeared. I've seen metalwork constructed and deconstructed because it was deemed outside of planning consent. I've been aware of failed planning applications, resubmissions, lapsed planning consents, and hundreds of objections from locals in the wider community on heritage and greenbelt grounds. And still, we persist in this inappropriate development. In the conclusion section of the latest 90-page document prepared for this meeting, prepared by Kirklees, it is stated, these are not my words, the proposed development is inappropriate and is by definition harmful to the greenbelt. It goes on to say the proposed development would harm the setting of heritage assets. It goes on to say it would introduce main town centre use to a site outside a defined centre. And as we heard earlier, it's been suggested that the public benefits of WCs and an interpretation room carry sufficient weight to outweigh this harm and non-compliance with relevant planning documents. I submit to you this is nonsense, and I'm about to explain why. Having lived here for a number of years, I contest there's already free public benefit. It is in fact the open space on top of Castle Hill. In my experience, that's shared by multi-generational large family groups playing cricket, flying kites, and having picnics. No need for a restaurant. Multilingual university students show off the best view in Huddersfield presently to parents and friends. Castle Hill is a magnet for cyclists, walkers, and amateur historians. All of this without WCs, without interpretation rooms. Interpretation rooms, in my view, are an outdated attempt to provide a nod and a wink to heritage. Any tech-savvy teenager, go ask yours, will tell you this is better accomplished by image recognition on a smartphone and an AI description. And moreover, you get to stand in front of the object you're looking at and gaze in wonder, as Simon Armitage suggests we should do and preserve. 22 years of living and visiting Castle Hill almost daily has never suggested WCs are any problem. There's not been complaints from residents. I've not heard of any complaints from users of the hill. They would be nice, but are they necessary? No, and they're certainly not a mitigating circumstance for building an inappropriate structure on top of the hill. A town centre style weekend pre-booking only, if you've read the document, yes, mainly car access restaurant bar will not enhance the experience of the vast majority of visitors, but may well please urban 30-somethings with deep pockets. If you read The Guardian last week, John, you'll be aware families can't afford a restaurant like this, and I urge you to say no.
Thank you. And the last speaker from the public is Barbara Lockwood. Barbara, you've got 3 minutes too.
Right. In 2012, Castle Hill was designated a local nature reserve. And the site supports a number of biodiversity action plan priority habitats and species that are significant at local and national level, including acid grasslands, species-rich hedgerows, heathland and gorse scrub. Resident birds or those visiting the site, such as bullfinch, linnet, skylark, and there is a significant bat population. The site is also believed to have one of the largest populations of little owl in the country. The previous original ecological and biodiversity reports are being presented again under a recent date for this application, though they've not been updated. There is no mention of yellowhammer or linnet, both of which are on the Kirklees Biodiversity Action Plan, and are red listed nationally on account of a large reduction in the breeding population. A red listing means that there is serious likelihood of extinction, and in their ways, birds like these are as important to this ecology as more exotic species are to the tropics. With the exception of bats, there is no reference to a desktop survey for any other animals, and a desktop survey is the basic level of survey. It appears that West Yorkshire Ecology have not been consulted regarding local records, nor have any of the groups within Kirklees, all of whom hold extensive records, Kirklees Badger Group, birdwatchers groups and so on. No updating has been done to acknowledge the serious fire incident in July last year, which resulted in a loss of habitat. When the walkover of the site took place for this recent application, it took place in December. This is nature's dormant period, well outside the optimum period for the survey. This proposal totally ignores the impact on the whole site. Instead, it concentrates solely on the site area of the hotel. It is ridiculous to suggest that the environs of the development are going to remain unaffected by this man-made intrusion. Efforts have been made to construct wildlife corridors around Castle Hill, but the scope for improving diversity will be much reduced by hard surfacing and the influx of increased numbers of humans and traffic. Lighting and noise pollution would create an unsustainable environment for many species whose habitats would be irreversibly disturbed. A large, noisy, brightly lit venue on the hill would end all hope of wildlife returning and would have a negative effect on the landscape. Castle Hill is a place to infuse all that nurtures its unique heritage and is a wild open space for everyone to enjoy, find inspiration, seek tranquility and to have fun. It's the green lung for Huddersfield. It was certainly never intended for commercialisation and profit for the few, leading to despoliation of a unique archaeologically important site. Nor was it intended to represent a commercial polluter at the heart of a key Kirklees eco-initiative, a fact which seems to have been overlooked by Kirklees planners. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to councillors who are making representations. So I've got Councillor Munro first. We've got 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Okay, I wish to categorically state that none of the Almonbury Ward councillors or members of the stakeholder group referred to in the applicant's business case. I'm interested to know who those council stakeholders might be. Approval was previously given for the restaurant and bar to close at 11 p.m. The applicants are currently seeking open-ended closing times for the restaurant and bar. I therefore seek assurance that they will close at 11 p.m. 7 nights per week. I also seek assurance that the bar will not be open during the day. The report is silent on this. Previous approvals stated that no more than 70 customers will be allowed at any time, including those in the restaurant, cafe, bar and outdoor area. The new recommendation is for a restriction on 70 covers for Saturdays and Sundays in the restaurant. There is a big difference between 70 covers and 70 people in the entire building. Additionally, no mention is made of customers staying in the 6 hotel bedrooms. While there might be 70 covers at night, on Saturdays and Sundays, this means there will be other customers in the 6 hotel bedrooms. I have done the following calculation. Saturday night, for example, 70 covers, 70 people. People in the bar, seats, 27 people. People standing in the bar, number unknown. People on the terrace, 24 people. People standing on the terrace, number unknown. Adding people staying in the 6 bedrooms, if they are doubles, 12 people. Subtotal, 133 people. Add staff. The plan is for 30 to 35 staff. I have allowed 20 staff. 153 people in the building. There are still a lot of unknowns here. I cannot yet add volunteers either. Who will run the toilets and interpretation facilities? Number unknown. But there are only 41 car parking spaces. Where will everyone park? I have not included visitors to the site to see the night sky, perhaps. The same situation will play out in a similar way during the day. In addition, the plan does not provide the number of sittings in the restaurant. Could it be 2 sittings, each of 70 covers? The access road. Traffic lights have been removed from the plans. No lighting will be allowed to illuminate the access road. How will traffic be managed on that road? Some people may drive to the top only to find no space, no car parking spaces, so will be forced to drive back down. There needs to be and has to be a management plan, and it's no point in discussing it down the road after this plan has been approved. It needs to be debated now. As referred to, there is no walkway for pedestrians with young children with pushchairs. How will cyclists be safely accommodated on the access road? Hybrid and electric cars are much bigger than diesel and petrol cars. Has this been considered? Visitors to the site may already have been drinking when they visit the site or may consume alcohol while there. Others may have taken drugs. I have serious concerns for highway safety on this access road and its junctions and the surrounding roads, which will no doubt become congested. Under Kirklees PLP 21, all proposals shall take into account access for emergency services. These proposals do not address this. Under PLP 21, new development will not be permitted if it adds to highway safety problems. Apologies, I've just got to turn my page. I have previously submitted comments on the perceived benefits of toilets and an interpretation room. I have given my reasons why they are not needed. This application pays no regard to residents who live in the quiet, rural and beautiful location here. Many of them are rightly worried about these plans. I too am really worried about these plans and the detrimental impact it will have on the ancient hillside and surrounding area. Please refuse this application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cooper, you've got 5 minutes as well.
Thank you. This is an important decision for the Planning Committee today, which will affect the landscape and nature of Castle Hill for generations to come. The previous application on this site was passed by 1 vote 3 years ago. It was by 4 votes to 3. The decision on this new application is one where it comes down to your individual judgments as members of the Planning Committee. Council officers are recommending that you approve this application today on the basis of the supposed public benefits. They argue that the damage done to Castle Hill is outweighed by the benefits of development. So you can make a judgment that says that the impact on this scheduled ancient monument is unacceptable and vote against it. Castle Hill, the site of an Iron Age hill fort, is also a local wildlife site, a site of special geological interest, and is a site of special scientific interest impact zone. People often refer to Castle Hill, as they have done today, as our Glastonbury Tor or Stonehenge, and no council would consider building anything like this development on those sites. It is a place in our landscape that is deeply embedded in the psyche of Huddersfield people. When the much-loved old Castle Hill Inn was demolished by the applicant in 2004, the whole site reverted to Greenbelt. And so the test to allow development on this site is very high. And under normal circumstances, on a scheduled ancient monument as Castle Hill is, that test is so much higher. And there is no scheduled ancient monument consent to build on the site at present. We need to recognise what we have in Castle Hill. It is what gives us a sense of place, and it is its wildness and that is unspoilt that people value. Now it has been closed off with a barrier at night time. This has drastically cut down the antisocial activity and littering on the site, but people can still gain access on foot to view the site and view Huddersfield at night from the hillside. The highways issues and the mitigation suggested will not address the problems on the road. Even at the current usage, the narrow road to the site frequently has standoffs between cars and minibuses, sometimes resulting in road rage incidents. Building a modern hotel on Castle Hill with 24-hour vehicular access would see an increase in traffic and antisocial behaviour and littering. The restaurant on the site has 70 covers, and the barrier and the restrictions that protect Castle Hill currently would therefore no longer be in place to accommodate this business venture, taking away the essential protection that we have currently for the site. I'm very sceptical about the supposed public benefits from the application and the community interest company that will oversee the Castle Hill Visitor Centre. Can we envisage a time when, due to fluctuating fortunes of the hospitality sector, that the exhibition, interpretation room and specialist learning room are repurposed for parties, wedding receptions and the like? In practical terms, what would the council be able to do in terms of planning enforcement if the applicants say things have to change due to financial viability? How will we address that? It will be too late by then, and this modern hotel will already have been built. We received only yesterday afternoon details of the governance arrangements for the Castle Hill Visitor Centre Community Interest Company. It is responsible for the element of the commercial venture, which is the ongoing maintenance, conservation and public access that must be balanced with the need for financial sustainability. This community interest company has just one single director, Indy Tandy, the applicant. You would have thought there would be directors who have a wider range of interest in conservation projects, aspects of the site. For example, Huddersfield Civic Society or Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, who have a site nearby. People who would give confidence that the CIC is operating as intended in its articles, rather than being dominated by the commercial interests of the applicant. Without that oversight, how confident can we really be that this application will deliver the benefits it says it will? I urge members of the committee to use your power to protect Castle Hill for future generations and reject this application.
Thank you. Okay, so we now come on to the applicant and the agent. So next person, Indy, Tandy, you could go first. Got three minutes as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Indy Tande. I'm the Director of the CIC and project led since 2022. Joining me this afternoon is Mark Lee of 117 Design. Mark is both the architect and the contractor for the project. We are available to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Malcolm, you've got 3 minutes as well.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Malcolm Sizer. I'm a Chartered Town Planner acting on behalf of the Tandy Partnership in respect of their proposed development, proposed Castle Hill Visitor Centre. Members visited the site earlier today. Wouldn't it have been preferable for there to be available eating, drinking and free toilet facilities, as well as information details and education facilities provided to explore the site's long history? There is no money for the council to provide such facilities at Castle Hill. The officer's update provides details of the community interest company which will be set up to operate the visitor centre for the benefit of the community, with retention and reinvestment of surplus income supporting the long-term conservation, operation and public benefit of the site, all secured through a Section 106 agreement. There will be no financial risk to the council. The video produced well illustrates the attractive building proposed, sitting modestly on what is presently a barren, stony, rough car park and site of the former hotel. The location, size and overall appearance of the building remain as per the scheme approved in 2022. Notwithstanding every effort by my client to commence development before the expiry of that permission, negotiations with Historic England officers have taken longer than it was hoped. We're very confident that given Historic England's confirmation that no objection to the proposals is raised, then a successful outcome to our pending application for scheduled monument consent is anticipated. We are confident that necessary approvals will be in place to enable development to commence within the 3-year time limit as recommended by officers. It has clearly been necessary for your officers to carefully consider the proposals, particularly in respect of Greenbelt policy, the site's location within an ancient monument and the listed Jubilee Tower. Officers conclude that the public benefit carries sufficient positive weight in the planning balance to outweigh any harm. Officers note that national government requires that a local planning authority should only depart from past decisions if cogent reasons exist. None have been identified. I urge you to accept the officer's recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions following the signing of a Section 106 agreement to include the securing of the package of public benefits proposed via the Community Interest Company. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Alison, can you just turn off your microphone as well? Thank you. It's okay. Okay, members, that's all the speakers. Over to members who would like to speak first. Councillor Scott? Yep.
Yeah, it's just a point of clarification here, and it's to ask the officers. I think the lines have got a little bit blurred for me today, because there's been reference made to the actual owner that submitted the application, about their company, and I'm worried that people have actually brought forward about times of operating times, like that. Surely that is dealt by licensing. That would be conditioned by licensing if there's a bar. It's not a planning committee decision that's to be made here today. And I also want clarification that the full business case was undertaken and looked through, and what the feedback was, because I would imagine some of it is confidential and not for public domain, but I just think some of the lines are getting blurred here. What planning can deal with, they can only deal with what's in front of us, and it's a planning application, not to criticise anybody, but to take what the view is within these papers.
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question. Ultimately, the applicant should not be too much of a material consideration. We're assessing the proposal, not the person behind the proposal. In terms of the licensing question, there is some overlap between the licensing process and the planning process. We are here to consider a bar. Bars inherently have alcoholic drinks served with them, but the ability to serve them will depend on getting a license. So it's going through two different processes. So we're looking from a planning point of view. Is this an appropriate location for a restaurant, cafe, bar? It's a combination of all of them. It'll do different parts through the day. But yes, on top of that, there will be licensing. They might align with what committees, what planning say. They might depart. It's a different process that'll do a different thing. In terms of the professional assessment by the external assessor, so again, they looked at the proposal as submitted and they did sensitivity checking for that, and they concluded there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it, and that if it operates as expected, there should be no reason why the business will go under. They did caveat, things can change, as we are all aware of. Yeah, all businesses can change, be that, for example, changes in employee contributions, building costs, and that's where they did recommend, partly to protect themselves and the council, that we need to be looking at this in the future as well. As I said through the presentation, it's not necessarily that simple from a planning point of view once the permission is issued, but we can have some control over that through the 106, where we do say, if you take over a certain amount of time, we'll revisit this issue just to prove that it's still a sound plan. Thank you, Chair.
You want to come back on any of that, Arsh?
No, I've got several questions, but I'll give way to others, but I've got a list of questions to come back with.
Okay, it was Councillor Sokol. You had your hand up as well.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this proposal is not a new application. The scheme was approved approximately 3 years ago, just over 3 years, and the principle of development has therefore already been established. I believe the delay in progressing the project has been due to changes within Project Management Partnership Board, which has since been taken over by a new managing director. All the relevant planning conditions have been fully discharged. The application before us complies with the approved scheme and planning policy requirement. Mr. Chairman, the proposal has received support and recommendation from Historic England, recognizing the care taken in its design. The building adopts a modern yet sensitive approach with the lower ground design that reduces the visual impact and preserve the setting of the historic monument. While any development near heritage assets must be carefully considered, but in this case, the public benefit clearly outweigh any identified harm. There is strong public support, and the people of Huddersfield are keen to see this long-awaiting project deliver as soon as possible. Mr. Chairman, the public benefit also include a free visitor center to allow people to get a deeper understanding of Castle Hill 4,000-year history. This will include improved interpretation board around the site and at the center itself. The center will feature an immersive experience room and interactive room and gallery. These will be free of charge. School group will receive free entry and refreshment to the visitor center, groups will be expected to be booked in advance of the visit. There will be staff information desk, public toilet. The visitor will be wheelchair accessible.
Chair.
The center will include amenities for dog walkers, including rest area, water station, pet waste bin, and shelter in bad weather. You have seen this morning when we were on the side how bad weather was. Victoria Tower will be open daily from April to October as part of the partnership scheme. The scheme will enhance the site's security through CCTV and the presence of a night porter to help reduce the current issues, including theft, vandalism, and antisocial behavior. Jobs between 30 and 35 and part-time will be created at the site. In terms of deliverable, business plan has been independently assessed by leading auditing team and confirmed as viable. The full construction costs are secured with funding guaranteed by well-established London-based bank and the broker, providing assurance that the scheme can and will be completed. There is no doubt at all. Mr. Chairman, there is no objection from the statutory bodies. KC Conservation and Design, no objection. KC Crime Prevention, no objection. KC Ecology, no objection. Environment Health, no. Highway Structure, no objection. Highway Development, no. Yorkshire Water, they have no objection on this matter. Even Home Valley Parish Church and Kirkburton Parish Council have made no comments. That means they are happy with the project to go ahead, which is very near, close to them. Mr. Chairman, this is a well-designed policy compliant, financially secured proposal with clear public benefit. I hope members to support and approve the officer recommendation today.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. No. Excuse me, this is not a it's not a question and answer session. Members can have their own opinions. If you don't agree with their opinion, they may not have agreed with the opinion that you put forward earlier either. As we said at the start, it's up to members to determine their own position in terms of predisposition, etc., as we discussed. So that's fine. Did you want to say anything further?
Yep, just to reiterate that the test is whether a fair-minded and informed observer would conclude there is a real possibility of bias. Members may have predispositions and may have engaged with residents, but must not approach the decision with a closed mind or fixed intention to vote.
Thank you. So I will allow more other members to comment. So Councillor Pinnock, you also had your hand up next, so I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start with a couple of questions, please? And at one point in the officer's report, it explains why an environmental impact assessment wasn't required. and saying that it didn't fall within certain schedules. Now, I have looked into this in relation to another site which Mr. Hurst might know about, and perhaps he could explain why an environmental impact assessment was not actually required in this case.
Through you, Chair. So there's two principal schedules when it comes to AIA development. Schedule 1 is for your big things, nuclear power plants, major national infrastructure things. It's not that. They're quite clear categories. Schedule 2 is a bit more complicated in that it includes general categories of developments and it has some potential triggers in that. If you fall into one of those categories and you hit one of those triggers, you then tend to do something called environmental impact screening. Screening is the first thing you do, where you kind of say, okay, it hits this mark, what is the actual implications of this? To the best of my knowledge, this development does not fall into any of those categories or hit any of those triggers. So given that it's not Schedule 1 development and not Schedule 2 development, it's not considered that an EIA screening opinion is needed.
So in fact, the triggers are sort of in a way more organisational things rather than the nature of the development, if I can put it sort of slightly crudely like that.
The categories are by nature, so off the top of my head, I think there's like urban developments, and one of the potential triggers if a scheme's over a certain number of dwellings or covers over a certain hectare size, like 5 hectares, that's when you then proceed to a screening opinion to determine it. The other categories are energy development, this and that. And on the grand scale of things, while I appreciate there are implications for this proposal, to the best of my knowledge, it doesn't fall into any of those categories, nor would it be of a scale to warrant it. Thank you.
So
point of order.
There's no such thing as a point of order.
Oh, right, sorry.
From a member of the public. Carry on, Councilor Pinnock. But you're not a member of the committee, so you're a member of the public. Councilor Pinnock.
Sorry. No, I'll
Thank you, Chair. Just to reinforce this issue about EIA development, lots of major developments fall into the screening criteria, as Nick's identified. The real test is whether there is a significant impact above and beyond a local issue. And actually, we are dealing with, yes, we're dealing with listed structures, national monuments, but actually the impact of the development is very localised. It's localised to the ward, it's localised to the immediate town centre, and therefore the greater impact of a development of this nature doesn't generate an EIA requirement, and that's where we've come to. Yeah, because it's a judgment, and that's our judgment. I hope that helps.
Carry on, Councilor Pinnock.
Thank you very much for all that. I mean, I still think there's an area for people's judgment in this, and I do wonder why the previous application was allowed to lapse, so that we've got a new one, and it does concern me that although there are all sorts of opinions, favourable opinions given for this, the business case does stack up, it says. What you can't allow for is something goes ahead, and then for one reason or another, the development stops. And the problem with this particular application is that it's on an isolated site, not in a town centre. And I'm not sort of wishing to suggest that there's anything that might cause it to fail, but I'm just saying that all these things need to be future-proofed to try and ensure that this doesn't happen. But I am concerned, amongst other things, that if the development sort of is only half developed and then fails for maybe reasons outside the control of the applicant, then it's not really in the best kind of site for that to happen to. I have listened with great interest to what the members of the public have said in this instance. They have put forward very reasoned cases, and I think that they have they've given every indication that they've given a rounded approach, and indeed as we as members of the committee are supposed to do, because I think you do need to consider, well, despite what we say, it may, and we don't like it, for example, then it may happen. So we've got to look at the possibilities of what do we do then. There are still things that I am not sure about in this, and I speak as one who was here before. I can't now remember how I voted on that occasion, unfortunately, but I am allowed to think it all over and make sure that I am now, in this instance, trying to do something different, perhaps. Various people have mentioned subjects like the numbers of people who may be staying overnight, shall we say, on the site. That is a very interesting concept when you compare it with some of the other places that members of the public have mentioned. Glastonbury Tor was one that I heard talked about. Stonehenge, well, it's a slightly different sort of place. The place I would compare it with is Maiden Castle in Dorset, which has got absolutely no facilities at all, and I'm not saying the two are comparable. Castle Hill is relatively close to a large town and a large population, so a different solution may be required. And bearing in mind that there was a building on the site apart from the tower, I come back to the point on that I mentioned about what happens if the business turns out not to be viable. Oh, sorry, there is another. The traffic issue is one that I am somewhat concerned about how. And I know you can do this by traffic management conditions, but how do people approaching the tower from a distance know that they're going to be able to find somewhere to park? It's sorry. Yes, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councilor Richards.
Excuse me. Thank you. I'd like to thank the officer for the detailed report. Harm is explicitly acknowledged in the report that this would create harm to the green belt, and then there are safeguards proposed. And it also states that because of the more important the area, the greater weight you have to put to the very special circumstances. And so trying to weigh up the benefits, the public benefits that will be brought to the site. I am concerned about the how these benefits can be secured and be enforceable, partly due to what Councillor Pinnock mentioned about should the business fail, change hands, whatever. Hospitality businesses have been notoriously difficult to keep profitable even in town centre locations. How does the council envisage being able to secure those benefits? Because you talk about perpetuity, but then I think somebody said Section 106 is only enforceable for 5 years. Is That's incorrect. Well, perhaps somebody could answer my questions, because...
Yeah, through you, Chair. So there is proposed to be a package in the 106 that requires a management plan that they will have to operate with. That will run with the land should the site change hands at any point in the future. Ultimately, I cannot guarantee that it will be occupied forever. I cannot account for all potential futures. What we have to do is assess it based on reasonable grounds and reasonable assumptions moving forward. That's what the viability assessors have done. So in assuming all things operate as expected, we don't get COVID 2.0 or some other extreme event, it should operate fine in the short, medium and long-term operations. But again, we cannot sit here and guarantee what's going to happen in the future, but it's about what's reasonable at this time based on the information before us. Thank you.
Anything further?
Sorry. Okay, yes, you obviously can't ensure that the business will continue, but in terms of sort of capacity, there are some concerns about highways, safety and access with the road. As I understand it, the road is still Kirklees' responsibility to maintain after the development has been created. I do have some safety concerns about it, especially if people, I know that there are proposed passing places and that therefore two cars should be able to pass one another on the road. But if this is a restaurant, we are going to reasonably assume people will be drinking alcohol. Road safety concerns, pedestrian concerns for access to and from. How far can they be ensured through the planning conditions?
I think to a degree I will just have to pass over to Chris, but I will just mention first, yes, the site is currently owned by the council, and the applicant would need to enter into a lease agreement to do these works. What that lease entails in terms of management responsibilities between the council and the applicant, I cannot say at this moment. That would be for the council as landowner to work through with their engagement with the applicant. So it might be that, yes, while ultimately it's the council land and currently we're responsible to it, as part of the lease that might change, or it might not. So we don't ultimately know how the site will be maintained or who will be the ultimate responsible for it. In terms of the other points on highways, yeah, I'll just defer to Chris if that's okay for you, Chair.
Chris, you got anything to add?
Yeah, a couple of points that I've picked up from members. I think it's the time Councillor Pinnock's about parking. I think one or two people have raised parking. What I would say is there has been an accumulative parking assessment undertaken. That's been a two-part assessment. It's based on surveys that were undertaken to establish what are reasonable existing visitor numbers, to establish what they are. And then we've used, obviously, which is industry standard methodology, TRICS methodology, to find out what the development traffic should generate. Those two added together over the time will give you an hourly capacity for your car park, and that's the process that gone. That shows that the 41 space car park should be adequate based on the data that's been collected and the TRICS assessment to accommodate both uses. I think we mentioned it when we discussed it this morning that there's always extremes that you can never envisage, but it should cater. That capacity should be suitable to cater for most. That was a robust survey, and it should cater for most events that we have up there. The point that Councillor Lee Richards raised about highway safety. There has been all sorts of things, not as part of this application, but in the historic of this application, there's been all sorts of things discussed about traffic lights and one thing or another. I think we have to think it's a scheduled monument. Any improvements need to be mindful and in keeping with its status. The passing plate, it's currently, well, you could sneak, but there's places where you could sneak past by driving on the verge. What we're creating is some formal passing places which will give you 4.5 metre minimum width, which will be sufficient for two vehicles to pass. We've got tracking to demonstrate that can happen. We've had an independent road safety audit. The scheme has been subject to an independent road safety audit. That raised a couple of points. Those have been addressed. And part one of it was rebuilding of a dry stone wall that's either crumbling, probably as a result of the fire, I think, has been damaged, and it's potential for it to fall into the carriageway. A something about improved signing and lining. Those have been indicated, so there's no issues have been raised there. That access is what it is. It is considered suitable for its proposed usage. Looking back on historical accident records, there has been no accidents on that road or at the junction with where it meets Castle Hill Sandlum Lane in the last 5 years. No recorded accidents. I know members of the public are laughing, but we know they go on what are recorded, not hearsay or I saw a bump. It's got to be a recorded accident as far as we're concerned. There has been an accident there was an accident at the junction, a recorded accident at the junction with Ashes Lane, and another one recorded on Ashes Lane about 140 metres away from that junction in the last 5 year period. Those are noted, but there hasn't been any, other than those two, there hasn't been any more recorded accidents. So there isn't historically, whilst people think it is dangerous, there hasn't been any recorded accidents on it.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any... Can I just ask, can we be quiet, please? Listen to... I don't know how you know what he said, because most of you was talking through it, but Councillor Lee Richards.
Thank you. So I do recall one accident, because I remember having to contact the police because a car had gone off the side of the road and had to be recovered. Sorry, just a couple more things. Sorry to be so slow. Given that Historic England were unhappy originally and they asked for a business case to be put forward to give them assurance, have they been sent the business case and asked, were they satisfied with the business case? And one thing I noticed when we looked at the site this morning and looked at the pictures of the plans, what is currently a sort of used as an informal car park in future is designated to be a service yard for the new establishment, but that there's nothing much on the plan to show what that would potentially look like. Could you just address those two, please?
Do you want to come on about the business case?
Yes, yeah. Through you, Chair, no, Historic England haven't been sent the business case. They deferred the matter back to us. They simply said, subject to the council being satisfied with the business case, we will drop our objection. So they didn't request to see it. If it was sent to them, apologies, I cannot recall, but their position was, subject to it being done, we will drop our objection. In terms of this service yard, there's not much information there because it's intended, as my understanding, as a bit of a free-flow place. It's a place where vehicles can come to deliver or staff to park. It's not intended for the use by the public, so it'll just be the the staff using it, and it will become an informal place that they use. So it's not laid out in any way.
Can I bring... Have you got...
Sorry, very finally then. I thought that was quite an important... We had a plan come back to us because it had been approved, and then they came back because they'd put nowhere to put any heating on the site, so it had to come back to planning again. I know a different place, but you know what I mean. There was one where it had to come back because they hadn't. When it was drawn up, there was no heating, and they wanted to put heat pumps around the site afterwards. So,
sorry, what's the specific point in relation to the service yard?
The service yard, depending on what it could look like quite an eyesore. And when you come up the road, what are the plans for it? That's what I'm trying to ask. What is the plan for that area?
So the plan at the moment is that it would be open. And I think using that example, which I do recall, if the applicant does later realise that something additional, they want it there or they need it, similar to that situation, they'd have to apply for it, they'd have to come back. So the plan at the moment is that service yard would be a surface space, similar to as it is now, that'll be used flexibly. There's no buildings or other accoutrements proposed within there.
Councillor Arm, I'll come to you next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just first of all, a couple of points raised by colleagues. I sit on Kirkburton Parish Council. We made no comment about this application, but no comment doesn't mean no worries, no fears. It just means no comment. It doesn't mean, we accept it, but we can't be bothered saying anything. And And there are other councillors in the room that are members of Kirkburton Parish Council as well. We may recall that. Point raised about accidents, traffic accidents. The council relies on police statistics for road traffic collisions, as they call them now, RTCs. RTCs are only recorded if there's been a death or a serious injury. Written off mangled cars, ripped down lampposts, knocked down walls do not count as accidents. So there will be many, many bumps that aren't recorded. I think it's wrong. I would like a much better system than that, but it's what we've got. So yes, people, no doubt, from the area will have seen cars fall over embankments, roll over, pull a wall down. But if nobody's gone to hospital, it's not an accident. Not a recorded accident. Well, whilst we're talking about traffic, I have driven up to Castle about 3 or 4 years ago now. It's a while since I've been there. It's a bit hair-raising, that road, going either way. I do worry about the potential for increased traffic flow on there, because I think it's pretty much at its capacity now. Not only the traffic flow, which could lead to road rage, it will lead to people coming bumper to bumper, it's going to happen. But it will also lead to deterioration of the road, which apparently is maintained by the council. We've seen a lot of potholes, particularly around Almonbury. I think we're going to see a serious deterioration of that service, that access road, because of the increased traffic. Now, Paul, first of all, I really should have said, yeah, there's quite a history of, wrong word in this context, there's a planning history of issues with this site, and I understand a previous applicant, although related to the current applicant, but a different applicant, which led to the loss of the existing pub, etc., etc. I pay no attention to that. This is a new applicant, so I'm not being swayed by that. But of course I'm aware of it, because we all are. It's the planning history. And when we come to this site, yes, it's Greenbelt. To my mind, that is not the important thing. To my mind, the important thing is that it's a scheduled ancient monument. And I put that higher than Greenbelt, obviously. I think it's much more important, because we all have areas of Greenbelt, they get developed on, they don't get developed on. But this is much, much more important to my mind. So I'm very, very cautious to interfere with the monument. There is potential benefit. Speaking as an older man, I can appreciate the benefit of access to a WC if you're on top of a windswept hill. Yes, I can appreciate that. But I'm not sure it's sufficient reason. It's on the plus side of the balance, but I'm not sure it's a sufficient reason. And in fact, having said that, the position I'm in at this moment is I'm conflicted. I'm still not sure. I started out not knowing which way I was going to vote, and I'm still not 100% sure now. But I'm not totally convinced. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Scott, do you want to come back now?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got several questions that I wanted to ask. The dry stone wall is actually eroded, and I just want clarification that in the event that this application was successful, would it be rebuilt? And if you don't mind, I'll ask a couple more questions on other things that I'd like to ask, and then let you answer and then come back to me. So I wanted to talk about the drainage on the site, the flood drainage. And has any 106 monies been secured, and can you confirm it today that it has been secured in this planning application. And for clarity, is the site in flood zone 1? And is it a flood risk at all? So I'll leave that one there.
Through Chair, no monies are proposed. Sorry, monies for flood risk matters. No money is proposed to combat flood risks. The site, being in its location, is flood zone 1. Yes, when considering flood risk, you typically look at pluvial and fluvial. One being water going up from rivers, other being water coming down. Given the location, it's not at risk from flooding from rivers or other water bodies. Rainwater, again, coming down would be addressed via the conditions for drainage. It's not in a particularly critical location, subject to conditions for a drainage strategy to address surface water.
Dry stone wall is
apologies, yes. The dry stone wall, are you referring to the one as you go up the access road? Yes, so it's proposed that that would be repaired. That was an issue that was picked up within the road safety audit, and the applicant is proposing to replace that like for like. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to talk about the heritage balance here because can officers clarify how they have applied the less than substantial harm test in relation to the scheduled monument and the listed tower, and how that harm has been weighed against, how that has been weighed against identified public benefits? Because I just think that today things are being taken in the wrong concept of what we are looking at. And I also want to add into that, currently at the moment, Kirklees has just recently done its tourism strategy. Whilst that's a benefit, we also look into that about local employment, we build into it visitor, the economy, and this, we've got to be careful that we've got this in the right balance, that it's the right thing for the area. So, and the viability of a business, I just want clarity, that is not for us to determine today. Any business that we go into or should venture into, that is at risk of any owner. So the markets out there don't hold us to ransom on a planning committee. That is to be determined whether the business is successful out there, how it is.
Want to comment on those points?
Yes, so through you, Chair. So the first thing you need to think about when considering harm is what the heritage significance of the assets are. First, considering Victoria Tower, it, as we said, I think a bit earlier, is, or on the site visit, it was constructed approximately 1899 to commemorate Queen Victoria's 60-year anniversary. The significance of that is partly from its architectural form, but more principally what it represents and the character it contributes to the area. It's an important feature for the entirety of Kirklees, or Huddersfield at least, that you can see. It is a sense of place, and it is great social and cultural significance. In terms of the impact on this, part of the value of Castle Hill is its isolation, and I appreciate that introducing a new structure within that isolation is causing harm. Whether that harm is less than substantial or the high level of substantial harm, that's where ultimately it is a planning judgment in correspondence with our consultees in conservation and design. It is considered less than substantial. The fact of the matter is Castle Hill will not be directly impacted on. The fabric of that building will be maintained, and while the isolation will be encroached on, it will still be the predominant feature. You will still see it from most places, from all current vistas in Kirklees. It will stay the dominant feature of that hillside. The proposed building is kept to a minimum in terms of prominence and should not conflict with said dominance of Victoria Tower. So yes, there's harm, but that building will not, the heritage significance of Victoria Tower will not be fundamentally undermined or egregiously reduced. So some harm, but it's less than substantial harm. Castle Hill has many of the same arguments. The hill itself is part of the setting and value of it, but a lot of that is down to archaeological value, given the past history of the site. As people have pointed out, there's been many different uses of that site across a unthinkable amount of time, and this is the latest one. The principal issue there is in terms of the archaeological value, will that be eroded? Yes, again, we are proposing to dig into it, but the mitigation there is that we're proposing archaeological watching briefs, so there will be an approach to ensure that they are done sensitively. So apologies, it's been a long day talking. An archaeological, you know what I'm talking about, will do a brief, and as they are excavating, they will be engaged, and if anything is found, they will stop, they will record it as appropriate, or have mitigation measures in place to ensure that that is appropriately recorded through the process. So going back to that test, yes, there is harm, but in this case, we consider that Castle Hill will be maintained largely as it is at the moment, and the excavations will be controlled via the investigations proposed, and therefore that harm is less than substantial. So that's the harm. In terms of the public benefits, it's a planning judgment. Councillor Armour has stressed that some of those carry different weights to him, and ultimately everyone in this room will have a different weighing of those judgments. It needs to be as objective as possible, weighing that scale. So officers do our best to give you our professional opinion. The committee will have a different opinion to that, or have the same opinion. It's for you guys to come to that conclusion. There are benefits to the proposal. It's just how much weight you give to them. At the moment, it's an amazing facility. I'm from Huddersfield. I know what it is like to go up there. Having those facilities up there could open it up to more people to engage, to get more interest going up there. The facilities for a toilet will help people attend. The cafe, it gives people more of a reason to go up there, to learn about it. I appreciate there are other ways to learn nowadays, but nothing beats being on the site. So it's a personal reflection, I'm afraid to say. We're not talking black and white. It's your own judgment. It's a difficult thing when there's X number of committee members who have to debate this. So we've considered it carefully, and in our views, we've identified the harm, we've identified the benefits, and for us, it does tip that scale.
Thanks, Nick.
Apologies. Yes, the MPPF is clear. Great weight should be given to the harm to heritage assets. The great weight should also be given to the green belt, and all development is inappropriate development is harmful by definition to the green belt. Even that, I appreciate that does not change our opinion. That is what the report has been written on the understanding of. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments, to be honest, having listened to the discussion. See, it's interesting because I listened to what members of the public had said, and I thought there were some really interesting points made. But my conclusion from some of those points wasn't necessarily that that was a reason to be against this application. The reason being, and there's some contradictions in my mind in some of this discussion, in that on one hand, what we're saying is it's a fantastic place. We want people to go and to see and to people to walk around it. But actually, today, the usage is lower than what it might be. We're concerned about creating something which means more people are there, but at the same time, that's in contradiction that we want more people to be there to experience it. So I think there's a bit of a contradiction there. Part of the whole celebration of the area is this continual inhabitation for 4,000 years, but we're concerned about having rooms that people might stay over in on the site, which to me, why is that a necessarily problem, given that's the whole point of it? It's a continually inhabited place, and it moves as we go along in time. Not raised today, but I know it's been raised in other things about the previous building there, and there's a lot of people who've said, rebuild the building that was there before, but are opposed to a more modern building which is more more suitable in terms of masking for the vistas from behind. So to me, there is some contradictions in the way it's been said. The other thing on the highways, I think the highways impact is a critical one, because if we do drive use, there will be more people there. There is an issue there in terms of vehicles. One thing we can say is that the improvements to the road network will be an improvement. So today, it will be less dangerous than it is today, which is a positive thing, I would say. I think the second thing, just on terms of construction management and highways management, there needs to be a plan for those things. I think it's very normal for us to delegate those as part of the planning application. I would say that when we delegate that, if officers say to us, we've been working on that with the applicant and we cannot come to an accommodation that works, then at that point we need to see that again. We potentially need to see that. But I think we have to trust that delegation to the experts in that area to make sure that that works appropriately, and that is normal. That is what we do on almost all our applications. Okay, so those are just my thoughts. So I think we've heard from our members. Does anybody want to? I think we should move towards making our decisions. But Councillor Scott.
So, Chair, in light of what we've heard today, I'm satisfied. I think we can condition some of these things in these elements. And so I think officers have given us comprehensive information here today. And I understand the passion of the local people, but I think they'll also embrace these improvements as they move on. So I'm happy to move this application and with officers' recommendation in favour of this application.
Thank you. Councillor Richard, do you want to come in as well?
It was just a comment that the report highlighted that for some people this would make the Castle Hill more attractive, but for others it would be a deterrent because it would be more urbanised than it is at the moment. So, and you did make that in your report. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the proposal has been moved by Councillor Cathy Scott, and I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock.
I just want to emphasise that this is actually very finely balanced. There are all sorts of issues that, as has been mentioned by various people, some people will find this difficult, and particularly with the comparisons that they've been using, they don't fit with having this level of development on a site of this kind. I personally would go the other way and say that there is too much there, despite the best of intentions to make the thing more accessible. You can go too far and make it you to some extent destroy the thing you're supposed to be doing something about.
Thank you. So we've had a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation. So I think Andrea will vote on that first.
Okay, so the vote is to delegate to officers to approve the application as moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Sokol. Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
Against.
Councillor Lee Richards?
Against.
Councillor Armour?
Against.
Councillor Homewood?
For. I'll
Okay.
cast my deciding vote for.
With a casting vote for, so the application's approved.
Thank you. That's been approved. We'll take a short break now just before we go on to the next application. Okay. Hi, welcome back everybody. Right, we're going to go back to item 9, which we skipped before, which is the Cooper Bridge Improvement Scheme. So I'm going to hand over. Who's going to do the presentation? Is it Ilyas? Yeah, okay. Hand over to you, Ilyas.
Thank you very much. My name is Ilyas Ramjan. I'm the interim head of major projects. And today we're bringing the Cooper Bridge scheme to the Strategic Planning Committee. The scheme, we're not actually, the actual planning application for the scheme will be coming later on in the year. Primarily we're here because the Cooper Bridge Improvement Scheme, just to give you a quick background, spans, sorry, is it? Thank you very much. Apologies for that. We're here because of the Cooper Bridge Improvement Scheme, spans both Kirklees and Calderdale councils, and to keep delivery simple, lawful and efficient, we're proposing that Kirklees determines a single planning application for the whole scheme using non-executive powers delegated by Calderdale under the Town and Country Planning Act and Highways Act. So Calderdale has, for your information, Calderdale has already approved their side of the delegation. So we will be taking a report to full council in March that seeks acceptance of these sort of delegated powers. And before we go to full council, we just wanted to share this report with you and to take note and to take any comments on the proposal. As you're aware, just to give you a quick background, the scheme will improve one of our busiest junctions to deliver more reliable journeys, safer movements for people walking and cycling, and it supports the local plan delivery and the wider bus network, all within the funding envelope of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. So it's been fully funded by West Yorkshire Combined Authority. So delegation matters because it avoids duplication of applications. It conflicts, avoids any delays, and to avoid having sort of two sets of conditions as well. And it also gives stakeholders a single clear process. So I'll now just quickly cover the scheme itself. So just to see if we go next. Yeah. So the scheme overview is, as those people who travel regularly through Cooper Bridge, I know you know that it's one of the district's busiest corridors. It's at peak time. There's obviously quite a lot of congestion coming through all the different road networks that they sort of accumulate and converge into Cooper Bridge. So the whole area obviously has got quite historic traffic congestion issues. So spans, as you can see, that the boundary of the site itself, where we're looking to develop it, it straddles both Calderdale and Kirklees districts as well. And we will be obviously acquiring third-party land needed north of the existing highway boundary as well. So we're obviously negotiating that as we're going along. Our preferred option, we've been through consultation before, and 3 options came out, either around about gyratory and the T-junction, and this was in December 2024. The feedback from the engagement was to determine a preferred option, which is the T-junction, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. As I mentioned before, that the whole scheme is being funded fully by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and the budget stands at 53.5 million quid. So that 53.5, we put it as part of the new TCR settlement with West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and we're hopeful that this will be one of the schemes that will be funded through that. The benefits of it, as you can see on the right-hand side, it supports the local plan and growth of new housing and employment, a whole series of proposed developments that we're looking at, obviously the biggest one being Bradley Park, which is HS11, which sort of releases nearly 2,000 housing units and releases around 68 hectares of developable land as well. It allows for more faster, more reliable journeys through the actual junction itself, and obviously safer junction improvements. We're looking at doing quite a lot of sustainable travel with segregated cycling, improved crossings, as well as bus journeys as well, with putting dedicated bus lanes in as well. So the program is that we're looking at public consultation on the preferred option around summer 2026. We're submitting in autumn 2026. What we're saying is FBC decision. So we've not said about the OBC, but the OBC is the outline business case that goes in early 2027. and the full business case, which is what's FBC, goes in spring 2027. So we're looking to start on site in spring 2028 with a finish in 2029. Obviously, all this is subject to funding and West Yorkshire Combined Authority assurance processes as well. And a delegation of non-executive powers, what are we doing? We're ensuring that the scheme can progress as efficiently as I mentioned before. We will be asking full council on the 11th of March to approve the delegation of key non-executive planning and highways powers from Calderdale Council across to Kirklees Council. The delegation of non-executive powers allows us, this is just limited to the Town and Country Planning Act and the Highways Act as well. Calderdale, as I mentioned at the start of this presentation, have also already approved these delegations on the 11th of February. This enables the whole process will allow us one planning application and one set of conditions across Kirklees and Calderdale, reducing duplication, inconsistency and delay. So the Strategic Planning Committee, we're asking the committee today and the chair as to note the report and appendices and provide any comment. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. So, thanks, members. So, yeah, like I say, we're just noting this today. So, probably not for discussion on like the specifics of the scheme and the application because we're not there yet. And obviously, it's more about the delegation, and that is going to full council. But does anybody have any comments about that before we note it? Does anybody want to comment on it? Councillor Scott?
I know you said we can't be specific, but I do think it's nice to see that the infrastructure, there's something, and what a huge amount of money for Kirklees in the event that this all does go through. The only thing that I noticed is there's some trees there, and is there any preservation orders on any trees that we could look at around that? That's it. But yeah, it's great news actually.
Councillor Army, you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. I know the area quite well. I was brought up in Bradley. And in fact, for the last at least 70 years that I can recall, there's been talk about improving Cooper Bridge one way or another. I'm not convinced it'll ever come to fruition. I understand your steps have been taken, but we've all known money vanish at the last moment, haven't we? You know, the money's there, oops, it's gone. But I do hope it comes forward because I live in Deaton, so I use that junction as well, like corridor. So I do hope it comes forward.
Councillor Sokol?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I think it's a long awaiting, this Cooper Bridge scheme. Yeah, we've been waiting for a long time. Now we got the money to improve the Cooper Bridge scheme, which is 53 million. We don't want to lose that, and if we delay this scheme. And I think it will be better if we one single authority to deal with the Coopers, which is Kirklees. So I'm happy with that.
Councillor Pinnock?
Yes, I'd just like to inquire whether there is actually bus priority in this junction. It's not quite clear from what I've read, but I'm not sure this will induce me to travel into Huddersfield that way rather than go through Brighouse. But let us see.
Well, I suppose, did you want to comment anything to do with trees or buses, or is that TBC? A bit too early to say.
Yes, so it will impact on tree preservation order trees. That will also come out in the consultation as well, so people will be able to comment on it. But what I would say, it's unavoidable. If you want improvements there, there's no way you can avoid those TPO trees. And what was the second question? I didn't quite.
Buses, bus lane, bus preservation.
Oh yes, so there will be bus priority. So there'll be bus priority travelling towards Huddersfield on Leeds Road. So there'll be a bus gate as well, which means it gives priority to buses over vehicular traffic. So there will be bus priority on the junction.
That's good. Yeah, and I think the important thing is having a scheme that's actually deliverable, which I think was maybe sometimes the problem in the past, but this seems more likely. Fingers crossed. Okay, thanks everybody. we've covered that, so we're happy to note that, and we'll see it next time at full council. Okay, and so that's good. We'll move on to item 11, which is this Milsbridge application. Hiya, yeah. Elena, Lenya. Wait, yeah, if you're leaving, could you leave quickly, please? If you're ready, go on then, Elena, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So my name's Alenia Jackson and I've been the officer on this planning application. So the application is land at Delca Street in Milsbridge in Huddersfield. The application is for 33 dwellings with associated car parking and landscaping. The application is largely the resubmission of application 2023-92490, which was received for the erection of 35 dwellings. This application has been received because as works were sort of commencing on site, the location of a culvert on site was slightly different to originally thought. As a result, this has required the removal of 2 dwellings which were integral within the site and the relocation of plots 1, 2, 3 which are on the northern boundary of the site. The application is being brought to Planning Committee as it's an 100% affordable housing scheme and as a result they have been unable to provide a full suite of Section 106 contributions. The photos in front of you are essentially the sort of the surrounding streets to the application as they were yesterday. The site provides sort of 1 parking space for each dwelling and officers' recommendation is to approve the scheme subject to agreement of the Section 106 details. And these are the sort of plans provided to support the application alongside their location on the site.
You just point out where the ones were before that have been removed. It is just
yes, yeah, it's just
yeah.
so okay. So if you can see the bottom plans here, so the left-hand side is the original application as it was submitted. So a dwelling has been removed from here, a dwelling has been removed from here, and these plots on the northern boundary have been slightly relocated as a result of the location of that culvert, which is sort of highlighted along this western boundary.
Finished. Yeah, sorry. I didn't want to. I was like, I already tried to make you finish once, and I was obviously that was it. Okay, thanks. Members, any comments or questions on this one? It's one obviously that we've looked at before and approved, so it's really just an amendment to layout because of the culvert. Yeah, Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As I believe I said first time we talked about this, yes, I want to see it come forward. It's a bit of rotten land that does want to be reused or used. I'd like to see brownfield coming in. It looks like brownfield. So, yeah, I'm all in favour of it. In fact, I'll propose the officer's recommendation whilst I'm talking. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Armour, and I think it's conditioned well as well. There's absolutely everything's been taught thoroughly. So, yeah, well done.
Everyone happy with that? Or we move to the vote? Or do you want to say something, Councillor?
Just wanted to ask, these are all for affordable rent, is that right?
Apologies, my microphone wasn't on. So it's 12 houses, which are 6 2-bed houses, 6 3-bed houses, which are social rent, and then it's 21 flats, which are rent to buy, essentially.
Right, thank you.
Okay, we're happy with that. We've had a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation, so we'll vote on that.
Okay, to delegate to officers to approve. Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor A. Richards.
For.
Councillor Armour.
For.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
So that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So I think we've covered everything. Yeah, we have not forgotten anything. So thanks for your time. We'll close the meeting and see you all next time.